rising cost of energy is sending some people underground. They're going off the energy grid, constructing energy-efficient homes underground. We discussed the new way of living with a local builder and author of the book Build Green, Make Green, Save Green on Newsmakers. They're called hybrid homes. Homes built underground. Are these caves or something much more unique and special? Adam Bearup is a builder and owner of hybrid homes. He's also the author of the book Build Green, Make Green, Save Green. Everybody likes to save money.
Everybody does like to save money.
It's all about the green in many ways. Your story is unique, right? Because people who try new things oftentimes are crazy.
I've heard that word a lot, crazy. I just like to say that if you were to go to a bookstore where this book is going to be and you went to the section on entrepreneurship or marketing an idea, there's tons and tons and tons of books about how to get the word out there and just loads of information on it. What there isn't a book on is what happens when it hits.
Well, I think we have enough history, though, in this type of building, or am I wrong? I remember I was in elementary school, you know, when kind of the alternative energy themes began to emerge. And I remember in fourth grade writing on geothermal energy. We were broken up into groups in the classroom, and we did something on geothermal energy. This is all part of the equations today, right?
It is, but what you need to think about and what people need to think about is that this type of building, this type of living is part of a system. So it's not just geothermal or solar panels. It's everything that goes into a house. So geothermal, first of all, great that you're working on that fourth grade. That's awesome. That's amazing. That's really great. But putting that system into the wrong house will not have the best benefits. You know, I have to look at the entire scope of the house, and that's what my book is about. It looks at every aspect, right on down to what you stock your pantries with and what you eat.
Well, visuals are always important on television, so we're going to start showing a video of what it is that you do here. Okay. So describe it for people as they're looking at it. Explain what it is that you're doing that is so unique and so different with this hybrid underground style of construction.
Yes, well, first of all, the story starts above ground. We started building houses many years ago, and I started researching first with insulated concrete forms, which is kind of like a Lego, but there's foam on the inside and outside, and in the center is concrete, and they just stay in place, super energy efficient, and that's all I wanted to do. That's all I knew. In fact, on my phone, I had the name ICF Man, because ICF stands for insulated concrete forms. But then I started getting a little bit bored. I wanted to see if we could reach that type of efficiency with this product, what would happen if we use these other forms of building.
What was the efficiency rating just in the concrete forms compared to standard?
That's a little bit of a loaded question,
well,
because again, it is all about the system. So if you built the house properly with insulated concrete forms, as you'll see in my book, there's actually graphs and kind of compares all this different building together, is extremely efficient. In fact, at a time we had built the most energy efficient house in Michigan out of insulated concrete forms down by Paw Paw. Thankfully, other people have stepped up and built them better and better, but the rating that you're looking for is called the HERS rating, H-E-R-S, and the lower that number is, the more efficient the house is. So average is about 100 on the HERS rating to have Energy Star and everything that's out there. The lowest that we built at the time, this was a couple of years ago, was a HERS score of 34. Now, this rating, everybody's shooting for 0, which would mean that the house basically runs on nothing. It produces its own energy, and that's just kind of the basic explanation. So when we look at going underground, can you imagine when I first saw these prints? I actually turned this job down 4 times, the one that's kind of the subject of this documentary that we did, this earth shelter, until I started thinking, wow, you know, I am getting a little bit, you know, just kind of bored with the above ground stuff. Everybody's catching up to speed and building that, but now I get to build underground. Can you imagine the science about it? So this place that you'll see that we're talking about in the documentary is 5 underground domes. Now, some of the faces face south like the walkout on a basement, so that we can use passive solar, so that we can heat these domes with the sunshine. And what we found out is that we can heat the domes up into the 70 to 75 degree rating without any heating sources in the wintertime, because it is so energy efficient.
I'll start with the basics. Why a dome?
The dome, if you look at the dome, it's the arch form of building. The ancient Greeks, as I'm told, most times the ancient Romans are given credit for this in their aqueducts, but the arch is the strongest known form of building in the world. They stand the test of time. So an underground dome that's sprayed with concrete, that you'll see in the video, is one of the toughest structures that you could build. We're basically building a mountain.
But these homes, they're by no means like this stark, ugly, sterile dome. I mean, I think you think about it, but that's not the case. I mean, you're reusing materials from other places. There's an actual front to the home. So, I mean, it has a true appeal.
It does, and it depends who's building it, though, because we've took our cameras for this documentary around the country, to Washington State, to Colorado. We've been everywhere, South Dakota, looking at what people do. Now, a few years ago, actually several years ago, when I sat down with some of our designers and architects we worked with, we developed a criteria of what our houses had to be, because we wanted to be the most energy efficient, earth-friendly house imaginable, but look just like any other house in its class. Now, some of the domes that you see that people have done themselves, you walk in, you're like, wow, these people did this themselves. And they love it because they did it themselves, but you know, when you look at some of the features in it. So going into this project up north in northern Michigan, these 5 domes, in order for me to take that project, I talked to the homeowner and said, look, we have to make this place look beautiful, and if your budget allows, then I will help you. But I don't want somebody to walk in here and feel like they're underground. So we took steps to make it feel, you can hear the homeowner talk about it in the documentary, where she says, I'm sitting almost 30 feet underground and you can't tell it. So we used products from old barns. We had everybody in the area calling us saying that a barn blew down or that they had barn wood that we could use. We had cabinets in there from different areas, antiques that are over 100 years old, all different heights and sizes. We had to cut them down and make them into this. So the only thing new of anything that we had to buy in here besides, say, some water fixtures are 2x4s. Everything else has been reused and recycled and made on site. And that's what makes it really unique. So it doesn't look like a weekend warrior project. It looks like a custom
It's almost as though
home.
you need to produce your own parade of homes, really, to make this appealing, right? Because you want more people to say, that could be mine.
Yes, but we have to walk a fine line. We've used other sources. I recognize that there's other sources, and there's a chapter in the book about how to market it. If you're a builder anywhere in the country looking to get into the green market. For instance, we used the 2007 Michigan Energy Fair up in Onekama. This year it's in Ludington. But we built a house. I wanted people to see the inside, the guts, so we raced to get this house up, but then stopped, so it wasn't drywall. You know, everything was exposed, and then the Michigan Energy Fair brought thousands of people through the house. So even though we didn't use the parade of homes, we used this other outlet, which would bring people that were already interested in this type of building or this type of lifestyle into the house. And then the following year it was finished, so we could show them, because I have a custom home building background, the trim details, the colors of the paint, how fresh it smells. In the book I say, I like our new houses to smell like a clean pair of sheets that are coming right off the clothesline. And if you haven't ever smelled that, I recommend you doing that. You walk in and you smell this fresh house, and that's what we got to show people. Now, to get discounts on those houses, normally you tell your suppliers, yes, it's in the parade of homes. We just really never were in that avenue. The houses, there just wasn't that much interest 5 or 6 years ago. So when we told them we were in the Michigan Energy Fair, they just thought we were crazy. Again, the word crazy. But it ended up being a huge success because it spiked the attendance of the Energy Fair from 1,500 people to 6,000 people. And that's to show you, even before this whole green building thing blew up, we were ahead of the curve, but people were interested back then. There's just kind of a reluctance on the part of the builders and contractors and architects out there to actually start learning more about this green form of construction.
Okay, I pick up the phone, I give you a call. Sell me on, you said you exposed this home up north for the fairgoers to see it.
Correct.
What is the material that goes into it? We talked about the concrete forms and the HERS values there. And you said, no, it's a bigger picture. You've got to put all the pieces together. So put those pieces together for me, and then, of course, the thing that will really spark my interest is getting me off the grid.
Okay.
So kind of Take me through what it is that you do in a typical construction.
All right. First of all, I'm going to tell you that if you were calling me on the phone to talk about this, because of the internet, you are very well versed, more so than any other builder that you've talked to. You would first say, I have never talked to a builder yet that didn't call me crazy. That's even happening today. Now I get calls from all over the country as I consult with people. So I first asked them, well, tell me what you've researched. Let me know. That way I don't have to talk so much. And then you would go on and on about geothermal and, that I don't want to use insulated concrete forms. I want to use beer cans, or I want to use compost or whatever. There's all sorts of stuff to do. So what I have to do is try to first figure out what these people want, and then ask them straight up what their budget is, because a lot of this stuff costs a lot of money. But say we fast forward and that you and I connect and say, I have this much money to build. It would be my job, based off of what you want and what your needs are, to create a house that's energy efficient, that is maybe barrier free, that sits properly so we can use all the resources on your land. I look at land with ponds, with rivers. Can we create energy from it? Absolutely, as long as we follow some guidelines. So it's a interesting set of phone calls and emails. Everyone's different, but after talking to hundreds of people and building dozens of houses, I can now pretty much tell on the first phone call, if they tell me what they're looking to spend and do, to tell them if they can do it or not. In the book, I would recommend you, if we talked on the phone or anybody else, that before you pay for a consultant or somebody to help you, buy this book. Look at this book, because 85% of what I tell you on the phone and compare is in this book.
But just typically, what are the fundamental building blocks to get off the grid and to begin saving money?
What we want to first do is look at the land. We try to get people before they buy their land.
You want to know what the terrain is.
I want to know the alignment to the sun. A south-facing lot is what we're looking for. And if you don't have that, then we have to readjust the way the house is designed. But if you have that, then we look at using less of a heating system. We look at using more windows. We look at what type of insulation we're going to use on the outside wall, because the idea is to create the house so it can capture the whatever resources there, hopefully the sun and the warmth, and then hold it for a long amount of time. And I can tell you this from some of our houses, and there's several different types of exterior envelopes that you can use, from earth shelter, even traditional framing, that when you start getting these houses really, really tight. We have houses that we put geothermal systems in that I fought and said, don't put these in. This extra $18,000 could be used for solar panels, because we have it now where you can control the temperature in your house by the blinds that are on your windows. If we do it right and we use the right exterior envelope and insulation, it's really neat to see a house warm up to about 73 or 75 degrees without the heating system running at all. And then when you close the proper window treatments, that the house is still 70 degrees at 1 in the morning without this system running.
Technology, how important? Is some of this stuff computerized?
Yes, well, when we start, a lot of the stuff we built is on the grid, but when you go off the grid, we can't talk to the systems. See, a lot of the different systems, if you have solar panels, or even now furnaces, thermostats, any of those kinds of things, I can get an email every single day to see how the houses are performing, see how the solar hot water is working, or see what the thermostat was at 1 in the morning. So we can talk to the houses. When we start looking at places like the earth shelter that's completely off the grid, there's no communication lines to it, there's no power lines to it, there's no internet there. So all these things have connection.
That's crazy.
For some people. If you want that kind of lifestyle where you kind of make the call in your life and you raise your own food and you're in tune with that, then it isn't as crazy as, say, somebody that's racing by you that just ran the 4-way stop. That's crazy to me. Or going and eating at places that just doesn't, over time isn't so good for your body. That's crazy to me. And maybe that's why people call me crazy. But talking to these houses, we have a virtual homeowner's manual where for the off-the-grid places, we have to drive out there and hook our laptops up to it. Or now we can get apps for our phones, but to be honest with you, we're building places for people that are way in the middle of nowhere, that are not on the grid. They don't want us talking to their house, because if we can, then other people can.
Do you have some in urban or suburban settings? I mean,
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. We've got, but see, this is the thing that I learned. Back in 2007, we put up a wind generator. This was up in Onekama, and that was for the Energy Fair house. So during the Energy Fair, everybody, including the township people, were, oh, it's so exciting to have a wind generator in our neighborhood. And this is when I just started running my company, Hybrid Homes, full time. And as soon as the Energy Fair left town, I get a call from our offices back home, because I've lived on the road now for about 7 years building these places. I get a call and say, hey, the wind generators, we're in violation of the zoning ordinance. And so that led to this crazy life, and just propelled into, now, guess what? You're going to be the voice for renewable energy in Michigan. And I say that because you can't just put solar panels up in the city. You can. But there's something now that has come up called people's visual rights. They're seeing that with the gigantic wind generators that they're putting up, and wind rights and solar rights and all these other things. So we do have them in urban settings, but we really have to look to make sure how big the lot is, where the houses are, because you can't just put something on your house, because it'll be probably 4 hours before the neighbor knocks on your door before you start seeing the benefits off of this system to say, what did you put on your house? I know I get emails that somebody wants to build, the rave in Europe right now are these hobbit houses, where you go out and build these mud underground huts in urban settings. So you drive through a subdivision, and right now everybody's trying to sell real estate and lots. So somebody buys a lot, next thing you know, looks like a beaver built a hut next to you. You know, if you had that next to your house, what would you say? You know, would you like it? We would. That's why we have to build these things looking really neat.
That's what I was saying. There needs to be a little style, right?
Yes,
it's all
that's
marketing
what's neat.
too.
Well, my personal opinion, without jumping on too many soapboxes or being called crazy, is I just think that the average American is dulled in their senses. You know, they don't cook at home anymore. They don't really know what a fresh house smells like. And I don't know if they're open to the adventure of living in something they actually want to live in. You know, they have to buy something that's in their price range, or they have to live somewhere where there's a good school, or, you know, a number of things. So imagine if you could build what you want, and that's the kind of phone calls I get. And that's why when you start talking about repaying back this technology, or saying that, oh, solar will pay for itself, people don't care. They don't care how long it takes to pay back. They don't care if they live underground and people call them crazy. That's what they want. And that's what's happening right now, is you're finally seeing builders listening, going, why don't you just tell me what you want? And they'll say, well, I want it to look like a beaver built a house on this lot. And you'll say, let's do it. I have no idea what it's going to take. Well, let's do it.
All right, builder, what do you live in?
What do I live in?
What's your home setup?
Well, to tell you the truth, a lot of people ask me that. I own a house in Norton Shores, which is a little 1,200 square foot house that was built in the 50s that I went through as my little hybrid hideout. And that, I never built anything or bought anything else, because I lived on the road for 7 years. But to tell you, where am I going to live in the next couple of months? Can't let this out too much, but it is on a little farm. You don't have to say where.
I'm just curious as to the construction, since you're the builder.
I will, in the book, compares all that technology, but it would be, and I read the book, it would be an insulated concrete form basement with the structural insulated panel walls. I wouldn't have renewable energy yet, but I would definitely make sure that all the provisions are in place for that. Where I'm going to live is a farm, because not underground, above ground, but what I learned up there, see, I've been on that underground project for almost 3 years, and at the time when I went up there, I was so burned out, and just getting called crazy, and every time you put something up, and working with all sorts of people and subcontractors, me going up there to northern Michigan 3 years ago is the equivalent of climbing to the top of the Himalayas and discovering this place where monks live, and reinventing yourself. Thus the book, the documentary, all those sorts of things. So what I learned on my quest, my adventure of building the earth shelter, is that I want to know where my food comes from for myself and my family. So we're going to have probably a couple of cows and some chickens and eggs and all of our gardens and stuff, that how I was raised, that's where I'll live. And then eventually, when all this craziness of traveling and building out of town kind of works itself into me working more locally, then we'll build the ultimate hybrid hideout on this property.
You said you've been on the road a lot. I'm guessing the documentary is the reason why you were on the road. The documentary is called Sheltered.
Sheltered, underground, and off the grid. Well, this project, the documentary, is a culmination of 7 years on the road. I remember leaving the house, and again, you can read about this in the book. The first couple chapters are this quest of, how did I get myself into this? And I started traveling. I remember leaving one morning when it was raining, and we're going to a town that I'd only been to a couple of times, had no idea where we're going to stay, we're going to figure it out. I see that with homeowners, this excitement. This is what I want to do. I don't have any of the details figured out. It'll just work itself out. And what I learned is it's very difficult. You don't have a TV. There are times where we ran out of money where we're staying, and we ran out of propane. Mr. Hybrid Home Guy, can you believe that? We're building these efficient houses. Right. You have to get creative. And as you'll learn in the documentary, number one rule is never freak out. So you look to your past or your upbringing and things. And I remember one time my parents dropped me off at a house to be babysat while they went off and on a date night, I hope, or whatever it was. And everybody was sitting around a card table in front of the oven because they couldn't afford heat. This was a long time ago, and the oven door is open. So here's Mr. Hybrid Home Guy building the most energy efficient house on the planet at the time, not the earth shelter one, but this is several years ago, with my sleeping bag and my dog sleeping in front of the oven with the door open because we couldn't afford to heat the little cottage that we were staying in the middle of nowhere with horrible water. We're sitting here building the future, and then reality hits. In these small towns, they shut down in the winter. 5 o'clock at night, there's no gas stations open, there's no TV where we're at, and you find yourself in total isolation. And that's the reality of it. So to film it and for people to watch it all over the country, actually on PBS stations, this documentary, it's kind of neat because we knew people were watching it. In fact, every time I'd come home, on my website, adambearup.com, is over 50 videos that we put out weekly or bi-weekly of the building of this underground farm up north. And that's part of the documentary. So some of that same footage is in there, but you can really see what we do on the road. And to know that people would email me and say, hey, I love that safety video, some of the fun stuff that we've done with these earth shelter videos would bring us peace, because the reality of it is that we would go from building this cool place in the middle of nowhere to staying in the middle of nowhere with hardly any resources.
Along the way, because you're looking at other constructions across the country.
Correct.
How many, give me the top two, where you said, wow, that's an idea we're definitely going to implement back in Michigan. There's another one. Were there one or two that I hadn't thought of that?
Yes, back in the late 80s when my dad and uncle got into selling insulated concrete forms, I was going through architecture classes, and I had tried to build my own solar panel in 6th grade. And like you said, in 4th grade, you're studying about geothermal. So some of us had this interest back then. So we got to travel, New Mexico, Colorado. Now, back in the 90s, I was in Colorado a lot. And out there, everybody was green, but it wasn't called green building. Around here, you call yourself a green builder, so somebody will call you now to build them a house. It's not the case. It's a way of life. That's what we live. The people that truly believe and live the way that they do, that's just how they are out there. So I remember seeing built into a mountain, and traveling and going into these mines and these places and feeling how cool it was or how warm it was in these hot springs. And it was just really interesting to see how they did things out west using resources, and then to come back here during the housing boom and realize that of all the thousands of houses and all these subdivisions that popped up, less than 2% of them were considered energy efficient. Nobody expected that their gas bill would go from $50 a month to $400 a month in that amount of time, so nobody cared about insulation, but they did out west. The other very interesting, neat project that I saw was a Frank Lloyd Wright project called Falling Water in Pennsylvania. Now, they built this house on a river or a creek. It's around here, I guess we'd call it a river.
And there's video online. I've seen this home. It's brilliant.
I walked around it and filmed it. In fact, even on my website, you'll see my first-person take of my tour of Falling Water. They let us film there, and check all this out. But what was neat about that, I went there as I was researching before, actually while we were building the earth shelter, to see what they did with the water. Frank Lloyd Wright, there's fans of him, there's not fans of him. But he had the same type of relationship that I have with the people I build for. They couldn't find a builder to build this place. People called him crazy. So they ended up putting this place up, this incredible place up, with local talent and the homeowners. And the really unique thing that I saw that I thought would apply at this underground place is that instead of trying to resist the water, resist it, they insisted on the water going where they told it to go, and it was neat. And you see that in fountains and pools and everything, and it keeps the water out of the house. And that was a long time ago. I think that was built in the 30s, way back. And now we're doing that same technology. In studying, I teach classes, Green Building 101, and all the way up to renewable energy stuff. And in one of the Green Building 101 classes is the history of building. I wanted to know the first time when somebody mentioned the word house, when they moved out of caves or to trees or what happened, all of a sudden, you use the reference of the Bible because it is the book that goes back a certain thousands of years, but there's all of a sudden houses that show up. So what I found out is that there's a place in Syria, an old city, that has the same type of construction we're doing now, and it's dated at over 6,000 years old, but now the stuff we do is called inventive.
Adam Bearup, the hybrid guy, author, documentarian. The documentary is called Sheltered. The book is Build Green, Make Green, Save Green. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Patrick.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Bearup.